So what we did, we early weaned, we kept the calves in paddocks here, and we put the cows straight into the laneway. And we set up a system of conveyor belts with treated pine logs along the side of them, so it was dished up like that. We then purchased gear so we could hand feed pellets as well as the hay, and then we commenced a hand feeding program. And once the cows started to calve, we brought all the animals out of the laneway, and we'd had a little bit of rain then. There was a little bit of green pick in the paddocks, so we're able to gradually wind back the hand feeding coming into spring and during spring of 2018. So then we carried on with the laneway system for a second year, but because they'd been in the laneways for so long the year before, we were suffering some problems because the laneways were really built as laneways, not as feed areas. They're on a bit of a slope, and after a few months of the cattle being in there, we had bull dust that was 4 or 5 inches deep. Whenever we went through there with the vehicles to feed out, the dust was coming up. We're having pneumonia issues or lung issues with the cattle. So then we really had no choice but to get the cows back into the paddocks. And by that stage, there was nothing in the paddocks because things were really ugly. It was very, very dry. So for the next 6 months, we were really hand feeding, and that was for the last 6 months of last year and early this year. So from an animal welfare point of view, that worked quite well. However, we did some damage. Water was not an issue for us. So we've always worked on water, and we've made sure we had a very robust watering system. We've got troughs. Since we bought the property, we put in 90 troughs. We've run about 20 kilometres of pipes. We have everything interlinked. We have it so we can remotely monitor it and control it, and we have redundancy. So during the drought, we didn't have any paddocks we couldn't use because of lack of water. I mean, our problem was lack of feed, whereas I think some people do have situations where they've got feed and they can't use it because they can't get water to the cattle. So we were very fortunate as far as the water was concerned.
Probably in hindsight, we probably should have invested in an extra silo for here at the time. But of course, it all comes down to cost, and we just purchased land and a whole lot of cattle. So you're limited to what you can do. You know, in a perfect world, we could have done things quite differently. But when everything was sort of snowballing on us without knowing what was going to happen in the future, you know, you just have to cope with what comes with you at the time. So yeah, in future I think we will set up with more silos and more feed storage areas so that we're more prepared, because the droughts are getting more severe each time. But yes, I guess we've learnt a lot from this, that you can't just think it's going to happen like a previous drought. You've got to prepare for the worst.